So good morning, good afternoon to everyone, and good evening to those in the Far East. Welcome to day 3 of the Youth Forum, Entrepreneurship Forum. We hope that you have enjoyed it so far. We've covered day 1 and day 2 yesterday when we talked about mentorship and opportunities in business. And now today we're going to be taking a different stage, and we are going to be talking about topics such as branding of business and scaling to infinite global opportunities. So welcome once again. Without further ado, I would like to welcome and introduce our moderator, Jace Pando of Indolina Leather, who will be taking over for the day. Jace, over to you. Good morning. From Texas, I believe.
Yes, from Texas today. So good morning, everybody. Welcome here. Really glad to have you guys here today. We're streaming live to you again from YouTube, just to reiterate for those who were not here yet yesterday, or maybe you forgot from previous, we're on YouTube so that we can continue uninterrupted, but just keep in mind your questions are being logged and those will be tended to at the end in a Q&A session. Also keep in mind that we will have an attendance form that's going to go live at the end as well. So we're going to go ahead and kick off real quick on our first topic, and that's going to be branding a business with Dr. Kenneth Wanjau. I'm just going to go ahead and read through his bio for you guys right quick, and I think this is a really exciting person to have on, so let me get to that, and then we'll hand it over to Dr. Kenneth. So his background is he's a professor at the university, or professor of entrepreneurship out of university, and also a small medium enterprise facilitator with experience in small business consultancy and development. As a scholar in entrepreneurship, he is actively involved in research with specialization in strategic entrepreneurship, corporate entrepreneurship, and techno entrepreneurship. Mr. Wanjau has experience in industrial production and factory personnel coordination. He has been awarded a certificate of opportunity for improvement because of initiating cost-cutting production measures in a manufacturing firm. He has also been trained on team building, which has enhanced his ability to coordinate firm activities as a team leader. He's a professionally trained industrial chemist and has vast knowledge on entrepreneurship and business development. He's been involved in training staff from various organizations on personal financing, entrepreneurship, strategic and corporate entrepreneurship, business development, communication skills, business consulting skills, and customer relationship management. Currently, he's involved in training at the University on Entrepreneurship, business development, and business management. He has been an ad hoc committee member that supervised performance contract implementation in government ministries and parastatals. Also, he is a consultant of Extra Insight Ltd, a Hortpreneur Enterprise, and Easy Dial Research, which empower micro and small enterprise owners through training, data analysis, conducting surveys, and other business development services. And finally, he is a chairman, board of directors at System Hub, and non-executive director at a Seth Group of companies. So without further ado, Mr. Kenneth Wanjau, you can take the stage, and we're really excited to hear from you.
Today's topic is a very interesting area, one that quite a number of youth entrepreneurs, potential and practicing, have sometimes got it right, and sometimes have actually struggled to get it right. And it's something that we have been trying. And when we say we are quite a number of people who talk about branding and trying to make sure that their products, their services are able to be accepted where other companies have failed. And one of the reasons why they have failed is because they haven't got it right about branding. So I'll share my presentation, and Dr. Elizabeth, you'll tell me Dr. Elizabeth, it can be seen?
Yes, it can.
Okay. Yeah, so today's topic is branding a business. As I said, it's something that the youth entrepreneurs have sometimes got it right, and sometimes they struggle getting it right. However, it doesn't mean that if you don't get it right, your business is doomed. So why do we emphasize that you have to get it right when it comes to branding, or why do you have to do branding? Something that we'll discuss later. Every time we talk about a brand and we ask you the products or services that you want to introduce to the world market or to the local market, is it a brand? Would go to the market and look for any item that is a brand. So what do we mean by that? Yeah, every time someone asks you whether your product or you as an individual, you're a brand, is they're looking at your name, yeah, the sign, the symbol, or design, yeah, of all these that help you to be actually identified and differentiated with what already exists out there in the market. Yeah, it's something intangible and in some aspects also tangible. Yeah, but it's very key to the bottom line of that particular organization. Yeah, and you have to get it right when it comes to the brand, because people need to see a consistency in familiarity. Yeah, in people's mind, when they hear a particular brand, they'll associate it with something. They want to be reassured that when they use that particular brand, they have paid value for their money. It brings fondness, when someone says they are being associated with a certain brand, yeah, or they would like to be associated with a certain brand. So a brand will always communicate, yeah, a product or service attributes, and we'll discuss about that. So in short, when you're talking about a brand, this is the end product of actually a branding process. Yeah. And that process has 5 key aspects in its definition. Yeah. One, it's a perpetual. When you talk of branding, you're actually engaging in a perpetual process, a never-ending process. It's just like entrepreneurship. When we talk of entrepreneurship, we are talking of a process. Yeah, Dr. Kellen talked about it yesterday. A process of creating. Yeah, and here it's a process that will never stop. Yeah, and that is because firms operate in what we call an entrepreneurial market. And in an entrepreneurial market, we have various entrepreneurs who are introducing different brands. So it is ever evolving, it's ever changing, in the sense that new brands attract a new category of customers. New brands target a new category of markets. Yeah, and new businesses are bringing in different products and services. And it's evolving because you have to keep up with the people and the market and also the businesses that are actually competing with you. The other aspect is it helps you to be identified. When you say you're branding, you want to be identified. Yeah? You want your stakeholders to identify your product. Your stakeholders want to be identified with your product. Yeah? It helps you in positioning your product or service. Yeah? And it is in this space that you become an influencer. Yeah? The other aspect when you're talking about branding is your positioning. Yeah? Must actually be translated into something intangible, assets. Yeah? The aspect of visual identity, products, and the kind of adverts that you actually come up with, yeah, are associated with branding. And even the actions that you get into or engage into, yeah, they are associated with that particular process. And you engage into actions, yeah, and accumulate assets so that this can stick into the stakeholders' mind and help in developing a perception about who you are. Yeah. So the other aspect is the perception. Yeah. When you talk about branding, you want to create a certain reputation. Yeah. You want to be associated with a certain category of customers. Yeah. In regards to your brand. Yeah. So the perception is the result of that particular process that you are calling branding. The other aspect when you're talking of branding is you want your clients to build a perception, yeah, about your brand, yeah, in their minds, yeah. And here we are talking of internal and external stakeholders, yeah. And each one of them want to build a certain mindset, yeah, about your brand because they have interacted with it physically, yeah. That is another approach, yeah. And when these stakeholders talk about your brand, it's because they feel it has a personality, yeah, because it defines the personality of that particular organization. The brand is the go-between between the company and the audience. And who are the audience? Again, the stakeholders, internal and external. Yeah. So when they come into contact with a brand, it can be done in two ways or in various ways. Yeah. From what they see and hear. Yeah. Also how they experience it physically. Can remember there is that popular detergent advert where um, the user is asked, what was your experience with that particular product? Yeah, that's one way of identifying a brand. Yeah, or that's one way of actually coming into contact with a brand. Yeah, and what is your general feeling about that particular brand? Yeah, and this is not only about the product and service. This goes a long way because you have also to talk about the company. When you are asked about, for example, Karatina University brand, they are asking you, what is your experience? What is your mindset about that particular organization? Yeah. So that defines um, the brand. Yeah. And this includes both the tangible and intangible aspect. Yeah. Because a brand can be applied to anything. And I've picked some aspects where it can be applied. Yeah. In a person, I've talked of David Beckham. Yeah. Not only in sports. Yeah. But also in fashion. Not only in fashion, but also now organizations are realizing is a brand that can be used to spread um, information, especially in the health industry. A business, and there's example of Apple, Coca-Cola, and Microsoft, or even a country. Yeah. Uh, what is your experience about Kenya? Because we have branded Kenya, yeah, as a peaceful, yeah, warm and social country. Yeah. And it even goes to ideas. And I've put there the George Bush war on terror. Yeah. So the products, services, and people of an organization are all part of the brand. yeah, and how they resonate with the audience, it helps them to perceive, yeah, and explain how they felt about that particular brand. I have an example of different brands, yeah, including a brand that I love of Karatina University, and we'll talk more about it. Yeah, why those colors really matter, why even the shapes, yeah, why they really matter, yeah. So why then do I insist that the youth enterprises or the youth entrepreneur, you need to actually think about branding in a very serious way? It's not a space that you can actually ignore. It's not actually a concept that you will be only appreciated in the classroom. If you engage in entrepreneurship, then it's something you need to take very seriously. Also, even if you don't engage in entrepreneurship, how, as an individual, do you want people to perceive you? Yeah, and that is because you want, one, to communicate a message clearly of who you are, what you can do. Yeah, it also confirms your credibility, that you're actually not a fraudulent kind of product. It's a product that you can rely on. It's a product that you can comfortably talk about it at any given time because of what you've gone through with it. Yeah, it helps you to connect emotionally. And what do I mean? Yeah, it gets into your mind and heart, and that's why you can talk about it at any given time. You don't struggle talking about it. And in some cases, the marketers say you lose your rationality, yeah, when you have actually been engaged by the product emotionally. Yeah, it motivates that customer who has experience to continuously look for it and talk about it. Yeah, and it concretes user loyalty. You don't want to actually buy another product. Sounding a bit academic, yeah, ACA 1991 says that customers who are loyal are not brand switchers. Yeah, if it is actually BMW, that is a car that you actually want always to be associated with. My late dad could not hear about any other car apart from a Peugeot. So when you talk about other cars, you'll wait for his time to talk about the Peugeot. Yeah, and that's because he had experienced that particular brand and he was not ready to actually switch to another brand. So why? What's the importance of branding? Having discussed what you'll achieve with branding, yeah? Through branding, you become recognized, and not only locally. Remember, you start a business to grow, and you want to grow beyond the borders of your local setup. You want to become national, and you also want to internationalize. You want to go to be a key player in the global market. So you brand so that you can be recognized, so that you don't struggle penetrating the market. And that is because it increases your business value. Yeah, it generates some future about your products. Yeah, it helps people talk about it, so that even associations, business associations, know that if they associate themselves or if they actually interact with your product, then they'll be perceived to be a serious business association, because they know through your brand, new customers will seek it. Yeah. And also, you'll find that when you build a brand, your hard working and entrepreneurial employees will always be proud and be satisfied. They want to actually grow with your organization because they are proud being associated with that particular brand. the company. When you talk about the company, or they'll ask you, do you have that time to listen? Because I work in a brand company. Yeah. And it creates that satisfaction because it meets the needs. Yeah. And they are happy to actually even tell you, trust it. Yeah. Don't look at the price, but look at the value it brings to you. Yeah. And that is because when that product goes even to the market, yeah, you are assured that it will attract, yeah, other players on board who will actually feel that this is the product. If it's a retail store, they want actually to stock it. Yeah. And when they stock it, they know anytime they advertise that they have this particular product, yeah, chances are very high. Probability is one that the foot traffic will increase in their stores. And that is because that particular brand, yeah, has created a certain level of awareness. Yeah. It has even been viewed as a premium. Yeah. It has created a certain loyalty. What I'm talking about is value addition. And when it has created a certain loyalty and it is perceived, yeah, to be a premium, yeah, and you can price it that way because of the number of people who are looking for it, then you'll always have a competitive edge over your clients, and you're assured that you'll have return customers. Yeah. Now, when we talk about branding, there is that misconception, and we'll talk about it later, that it is something that is associated with large organizations. No, I encourage the youth entrepreneurs to take it very seriously because it will offer you competitiveness. Yeah, you'll always be a step ahead of your competitors because entrepreneurial firms, and that is what you're supposed to generate, will always seek for something that makes them unique, and branding is one of them. Yeah, it will add that value that will always sustain your business model. So when you are developing your business model as a youth entrepreneur, factor in the aspect of branding because that will help you to differentiate your products and services with what already exists in the market, hence increasing your market share to that level that you will have to continuously look for resources to sustain that particular value. Yeah. So you'll find that you can only advertise a brand when you take branding to be very serious. Yeah. And the aspect of branding is only associated, yeah, with big companies. That is wrong. It starts with a startup. In fact, the pre-startup activities, one of them is branding. Note it down. And then we actually get into the startup phase. Ensure it is part of your business model. Yeah. Then the other challenge that you'll always experience if you don't take branding seriously is the aspect of non-performance. Yeah. And when you talk of non-performance or failure, is you have not taken branding through a thought process and seen the value of it. So that means you've come up with a brand that has failed to communicate. Yeah. It does not connect, yeah, with the customers. It is not doing what you have actually listed it as supposed to be doing. There is no connection with what you are actually selling. So be very careful when you talk of brand, that I have a brand. Yeah. Does it communicate? Look at even the word. Yeah. How you award your business. Don't just come up with a name. Remember, we talked about brand. One of the things that when you talk about the brand is a name. The term, the selling tag. Yeah. Be very keen on that. Yeah. So some of the micro, small, medium enterprises have got it wrong when it comes to the naming of the brand. Yeah. Then the aspects of capacity. You fail to engage a brand expert, and don't look at the cost, because actually when it becomes a brand, it supersedes the initial cost that you actually experience when you engage the brand expert. Yeah. Then, because you're in a hurry to get into the market, because you think that others will take up your space, you don't spend quality time thinking about the brand. You don't take quality time looking for the right resources. And the other aspect is the budgetary constraint. And that is because you don't spend time also with an expert in identifying what are the components that will actually be involved in coming up with this particular brand. Yeah. Because when you're branding, when you want to engage in branding, that means you want to build a brand. Yeah. What do you need to build a brand? You need to ask yourself, who is it meant for? That's another thing the youth entrepreneurs have failed to address critically. Yeah. Let me give an example. One product, soft care for babies. Yeah. That particular brand communicates, yeah, what it will actually do and what it is meant and who it is targeting. Yeah. Then you also have to ensure that as you are growing your company, get it right with the people you bring on board, irrespective of the size of your firm. Don't start saying it is too small. Negotiate. Have that particular person on board just to help you build the brand, build the product, build the service, and engage him or her about what you want to be. Talk about the vision. And that is because you've taken your customer very seriously. You know who you want to target. Yeah. You know the kind of information you want to communicate to this particular customer. Yeah. Because that product, that service you're offering, yeah, one way or the other, it says about you. Yeah. And that is because you want to create a brand equity that will always attract stakeholders. Yeah. And that because when you talk of brand equity, there is value in that particular brand that you are introducing in the market or in that particular organization. So consumers would like to be associated with that particular brand, yeah, at all given time. Yeah. So when you're building that brand, yeah, choose elements that will help you to be distinguished from the others. Look at marketing, and I'll use the simple 4 P's. I know they have grown to 8 P's in some cases. Yeah. Use that particular 4 P's concept when you're developing your marketing programs. Yeah. Look at the product from the aspect of price. Is the price right? is that the right product? Yeah. And are you promoting it in the right way? Yeah. So that you can be able to talk about that product, yeah, in a way that you will be able to get it right when it comes to advertising. Yeah. And it means that you can be able to leverage on internal and external entities, yeah, without a big challenge. And what do we talk about internal entities? We are looking at a sales team that is proud about the product and they are ready to ensure it gets to all aspects. It gets to all corners of the country. Yeah. We are looking at external entities like the digital platforms. Yeah. So that when you approach a farm like Jumia, yeah, they'll help you magnify your product because it is a brand. Yeah. They won't turn you down. They won't even say that sorry, because you've got it right when it comes to branding. And one aspect that the youth entrepreneurs should be keen about is the colors. The colors communicate a lot. Yeah. You just don't put a color because you feel that I like this color, you're emotionally attached to it. No, there is a reason why big organizations, yeah, use particular colors. And there is an example there from that color emotional guide. And since I'll share with you, these are things you'll actually get to understand. Get it right when it comes to color. Yeah. And that is because, and I've picked a few of the colors, you communicate something when you have different colors, a mix or an array of colors. For example, and I'll be fast about this, when you have red, yeah, there is that excitement, yeah, your passion, yeah, there is the aspect of danger, energetic, and action, yeah, danger because you capture attention. You want to tell people that there is something out there that you should be so much alert about. And there's a reason why Coca-Cola use it in hospitals, the red sign. Yeah. Orange, every time you talk about Fanta orange drink, yeah, we are talking about a product that represents creativity, adventurous, enthusiastic, and you're ready to be successful and you're balanced emotionally, you're rational. Yellow, yeah, revolves around sunshine, evokes feelings of happiness, positivity, optimism. Ferrari have actually used it, DHL, and the yellow cabs. Yeah, that's what they are communicating. Pink color, we say every girl wants to have a pink dress, everything pink. Yeah, and the best example is the Barbie girl toy. Yeah, and that's because it revolves around femininity, playfulness. Yeah, and it's sometimes that aspect of immaturity and unconditional love. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, because you're still growing. Yeah, the green, we talk of us being a green university. Yeah, it's associated with growth, fertility, stable health, and environmental. And the other aspect is generosity. And we have the Land Rover, yeah, vehicle. You can all remember the Land Rover from Britain. Blue, when you have blue, when you brand your products or company with a blue color, talking of stability, harmony, peace, and calm. And that's why Facebook, Twitter, Aquafresh, and toothpaste and Oral B use it. Purple is a color for the kings. Even look at your church leaders. They love purple. Yeah. And that means you are connected to power. It's a sign of power, nobility, wisdom, luxury, and spirituality. Cadbury has always used it, and that's a message that they are sending to you. Yeah. Adidas has white as a key color in most of its products. That's because they want to communicate that this is just an innocent product. It brings in the good feeling, the cleanness, and humility. Yeah. And in some cases, negative side, the sterility and cold. You also have to look at that particular aspect because you'll be critiqued about the color and you need to have an answer for it. Black, I had Guinness. It's one of the products. Yeah. And this is a symbol of mystery, power, and that's why it's associated with men, elegance, and sophistication. Yeah. And in some cases, you can also be told it's associated with sadness and anger. Yeah. But that's okay. Yeah. As I said, you need to have an answer for that. Yeah. And the positivity should override the negativeness side. Yeah. So Nike have used it. Yeah. Gray been used by by Apple, and brown relates to comfort, security, and a down to earth nature. And that's why UPS will always be perceived as a service for all. Yeah. So what are the misconceptions here about the color? Yeah. A lot of studies have been done, and a lot of debates have actually been generated the exact impact of color to human psychology. Here in a developing country like Kenya, colors have been associated with different cultures. Yeah, the Maasai and the Kalenjin will always use red. Yeah, because it has a certain meaning to their culture. The Kambas will use the yellow because it has a certain cultural orientation. Yeah. And the Kikuyus have a reason why they love the brown color. Yeah. I don't want to say that branding is only associated with large organization. We have one of the best performing SME in Kenya, True Black. There's a reason that they have used that black, and I've explained what black means, what white means, and what gold means. Yeah. And it's an experiential marketing agency. Yeah. And they have used the combination of those three colors, black, white, and gold, to push for their brand, to endear themselves to the customers. The other one is Melvin's. Yeah. Combination of that particular color has endeared themselves to the tea loving customer. Yeah. There's a reason they have used the gold, brown, and the deep red. Yeah. Comfortably. So for us to be able to push that aspect of the brand, can't fail to talk about marketing. And when we talk about marketing, it's a series of activities that have a direct impact on the way goods and services are moving from one consumer to the other. And you do it knowing that by the end of the day, the consumer will be satisfied. Yeah. So branding will be used by the entrepreneur, yeah, as a strategy, yeah, to communicate the value of that particular product and service attributes, yeah, to the consumers. Yeah. A good example here is Coca-Cola, yeah, whereby if Coca-Cola were to experience a disaster where the there was a burn down, or one of the factories is raised down, the company would survive. Yeah. But in our worst scenario is where, as the consumers, suddenly have a lapse of the memory and we forget anything to do with Coca-Cola. It will affect their bottom line because you don't want to be associated with it. Yeah. You don't want even to stock it in your business. Yeah. And that is because when you talk of a brand, yeah, and branding is strategic, what we mean is branding, for you to engage in branding, there is a game plan in place. In other words, branding is a game plan for the entrepreneur. Yeah. While marketing is tactical. Yeah. You have to do a calculated adjustment in your activities for you to be able to say that you're engaging in marketing. Calculated in terms of product, price, the place, and promotion. Yeah. While when you're branding, you are telling the consumers that you have a game plan of making sure that your product remains in your mindset. Yeah. So the brand is bigger because it will actually help you to do the marketing. Yeah. So branding remains after marketing activities have actually been done. And that is because it sticks to the consumer's mind for a very long time. Yeah. And in marketing, yeah, you have to engage in these particular activities. No one wants to know how you have actually struggled in doing personal branding, personal marketing. No one wants to know how you have actually struggled to get that van to be branded. Yeah. They bought it because it has created a certain perception in their mind. Yeah. And that is because through branding, you create the loyal customers. You become an advocate of certain attributes. And you even bring certain customers who initially were doubtful, the laggards. They were slow to accept. But because of consistency, you are able to create a certain mindset about the product. And that's why they want to be associated with it. Now, there are certain emerging issues in branding. And because of, as I said, an entrepreneurial market that exists out there, and governments are working hard all over the world to create that entrepreneurial market, we have a new category of individuals that are using technology to push for the brand. And we are calling them the brand influencers. Yeah. And these brand influencers are very creative and innovative because they are using the social media platform to connect with the audience. Yeah. So the online influencer is an individual who will actually work hard to create an audience, yeah, or a fan base via online, yeah, online channels, especially the social media, yeah. And the influencers are not just doing it in a traditional way, they are entrepreneurial. And it's through this that they are able to promote the product and earn a living. And there are various different types. So organizations are actually looking for, they are called marketing influencers, yeah, models, so that they can engage them. And what benefits do the companies stand to benefit? when you bring in a brand influencer. You create a new channel of customers. New networks are developed. Yeah. And when you bring in a certain individual who is actually perceived to be a brand, to push or to promote your brand, then you are creating trust, and you're talking of being a credible organization. And they'll create synergy. Yeah. And that's because they themselves are brands. So they will help you in developing quality content and develop authentic relationship with their followers. They have followers. Yeah. And they are very creative. And they influence the ability to be creative. Yeah. So when engaged in branding, we are talking of a big idea that this company wants to pursue, values that you treasure, and you are demonstrating that you are going somewhere. Yeah. You are visionary. Just because you're an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs are visionary. Yeah. And you have certain attributes, yeah, that you feel are the right ones that you want to be actually associated with. And you're all doing this, yeah, with a consideration of the SWOT analysis. Yeah. So these are things that I've talked. Yeah. So how do you manage that particular brand? Work hard. As a youth entrepreneur or a startup, please work hard. Yeah. To protect your brand at all given time. There's some interesting statistics that I've used every time I talk about branding. Globally, we have 46 million, slightly 46 million registered brands. In Africa, we have 856,672 registered brands. And in Kenya, we have 95,301 registered brands. Yeah. Protect your brand with either trademark, and there is always the government ready to support you in protecting the brand. Yeah. And this will help you to internationalize with a lot of ease. Remember, you're in business because of your stakeholders. Yeah. Your customers would like to have a feel good attitude. And that's because they're experiencing or they're interacting with a different product that meets their expectations. Yeah. Your employees would like actually to continuously work with that particular organization. Yeah. And the opinion leaders don't have a challenge commenting about your product. Treat your brand as an investment, not a cost. Yeah. Let it be relevant to your customers. Yeah. And let it be appealing to the contemporary customer. Yeah. Because it adds value. Understand your brand. Yeah. And that's because most of the time people will ask you, discuss it. Yeah. Tell us why it is what it is. Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, understand your product. Yeah. And know how to communicate your product to ensure that you have you increase your customer base. So in conclusion, one is that branding has become a mainstream practice, yeah, to entrepreneurial firms. Yeah. And it's become one of the most commonly used vocabulary to the entrepreneurs. Yeah. It's much more than a logo or a product, because it represents the personality of that particular company. Yeah. And it's an interface between the customer and the audience. Yeah. And also, it has made the marketers realize this is not a profession that can be taken lightly. Yeah. And that's because big brands out there or companies, yeah, are also facing challenges. The market is shrinking. Yeah. And it's getting weaker and not stronger because others are actually coming on board. Yeah. And they are giving you a run for their money. So, as a marketer who is keen on branding or an entrepreneur who is keen on branding, you have to actually work hard to ensure that you produce the best result about the brand, even with the fewer resources. To cap it up, I'll say that the 21st century customer seeks convenience, satisfaction at a lower cost. And that particular customer is so much empowered. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Wanjo, for that wealth of knowledge. Truly helpful for me, and I'm sure it was for the remainder of these entrepreneurs here as well. I think if there's anything we can really take away from it, it's just to build this kind of world around your brand that both intrigues you and your team that's supporting it, and also that really engages your audience and your customers in a way that gives them like brand equity, as you had mentioned. So yes, incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for that. Before we move on to our second topic, I just want to say welcome right quick again to anybody who maybe joined us a bit late. Remember to keep your questions coming for the trainers in the chat box, because we'll be sharing those with them at the end in a live Q&A session. So yes, please keep those questions coming. Also keep in mind that we'll have an attendance form that will go live once we start the Q&A session. And so yeah, you can find that in the description for the video, or we'll be putting it in the chat whenever it goes live. So keep that in mind as well. And with that being said, we're going to move on to our next topic now, which is scaling for infinite global opportunities with Melissa Sassy. I'm going to read her bio right quick. It's incredibly impressive, and then we'll go ahead and start off with her talk. So Melissa Sassy is the chief penguin of IBM HyperProtect Accelerator. Yes, she created her own penguin title. Melissa works with early stage entrepreneurs on digital and business transformation. Have you heard of Call for Code? It's an IBM initiative aimed at preparing and responding to climate change via tech innovation. Melissa is a judge for that. Prior to IBM, Melissa spent several years at Microsoft, where she built internet and energy access networks and introducing digital skills for the newly connected. Melissa is also founder and CEO of Mentor Nations, a youth-led digital skills movement in Africa that has taught tens of thousands of youth to code across 12 countries. Melissa is chair of IEEE's Digital Intelligence Working Group and is on steering committee of the Coalition for Digital Intelligence with the World Economic Forum, OECD, IEEE, and the DQ Institute. She is also a founding member of broadbandpolicy.org and holds board positions with TACMIL, a nonprofit with 30 informal schools across rural Pakistan, and TechWoman.Asia, a Kabul, Afghanistan-based profit focused on tech skill building for Afghani women and girls. Melissa holds 2 master's degrees and is working towards her PhD. Her research focuses on the digital inclusion of underrepresented communities. Melissa serves on a roundtable with the UN and has been a speaker in more than 100 topics involving digital inclusion, community building, youth empowerment, imposter syndrome, and personal branding. So without further ado, let me hand it over to Melissa, and we're excited to hear you talk.
Awesome, thank you. So my name is Melissa Sassy, as Jace mentioned. I want to share, before we get started, a few things that I have in my notebook right here. And why do I want to share this? I think as we start this talk, or my talk, you've obviously been involved in a lot of activities over the last few days, and we just heard about branding, which for me is super important. But before we jump into my presentation, what I wanted to talk about first is, what are the skills, and what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? So I think first off, it's accepting the concept of uncertainty. You're not going to know everything. You're, going out into uncharted waters. And that means an unknown future. It means rethinking and reimagining the future, a future that you're creating. It's something where you may not know and you may not be able to predict the future. So how do you handle uncertainty? It's about focusing on what you can control. It's about controlling and shaping the future, not predicting it. It's about taking actions to make progress. It's about correcting as the future unfolds. It's about learning how to create a business model canvas. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. It's about putting that into practice, having it etched in your mind. So if you're stuck in an elevator for 30 seconds with the CEO of IBM, which is where I work, the CEO of Microsoft, where I used to work, Satya Nadella, and knowing how can you pitch your wares in 30 seconds without any prep? Can any of you do that? If you get stuck in an elevator, can you share what's your problem statement? What's your solution? Who's your target market? What's your business model without looking at a piece of paper, without having a presentation in front of you? It's about experimenting rapidly with empathy. It's about truly incorporating design thinking into everything that you do. It's about being audience-centered. What do I mean by that? It's about testing and learning from your customers, from your team. It's being diverse and inclusive. All right, I'm going to go to my next page. And don't worry, I do have a presentation for you. Let me just fix my camera a little bit. It's a little bit fuzzy. Sometimes it has this autofocus and it's not my friend. So it's knowing what your MVP should be. That means your minimum viable product. It's pivoting when necessary. It's being comfortable with failure. It's being confident with your passions and your strengths. Do you know what your passions are? Do you know what problem you're trying to solve? Do you know what your solution is? It's being a learn-it-all. What do I mean by that? It's being prepared to learn anything and everything that's associated with your passions. It's associated with your solution. And it's what wakes you up in the morning and makes you do what you do. So for me, I'm passionate about digital skill building, as you heard in my bio. It's about youth empowerment, empowering youth to build our future, and having youth involved in everything and anything that we do. It's about inspiring technology entrepreneurship. So for me, those are the things that wake me up in the morning. Quality education, gender inclusion, reduced inequalities, economic empowerment. Those are the things that I talk about. And if you look at all of my entrepreneurial endeavors, whether that's being an intrapreneur inside of IBM or being an entrepreneur with my nonprofit or my startup, it all revolves around those things. And you'll notice, for any of you who follow me on Twitter, which by the way, my Twitter handle is right here, Mentor Africa with a K. I talk about those things. I share events, and I'm going to give you a couple of links today when I kick off my presentation. It's hustling to get out there, to craft new opportunities. It's thriving in ambiguity. It's seeking change. Yeah, you're looking for change. You're not afraid of it. You're not risk averse. You're looking for change. And you're looking for amazing opportunities that it will help you critically question everything in front of you. It's being an innovator, a creator, a maker, and a doer. You're empowered by technology. You're not a consumer of technology. Again, you're a creator, you're a maker, and you're a doer. You're taking responsibility and you're standing behind your goals and beliefs. You're being an innovative thinker and recognizing that there's always a new way to do things. And things can always be done better or different. It's having courage to take risks. It's thinking about your values, which are creativity, passion, and innovation. It's taking action. It's persistence, it's patience, it's purpose, it's people, and it's profits. So those are a couple of things, well, more than a couple, that I got out of a few articles that I read yesterday. And I thought I would share those little tidbits with you. Now, one of the things that I'd like to cover today that I believe is necessary to scale, to go global, to gain access to funding, to keep yourself focused, and to do all of those things that we talked about just now from my notebook. And that's something basic, and that's having the right pitch deck. It's knowing how to pitch your wares and being able to communicate clearly about your business so that you know where you're going, how you're going to get there, and you know how to communicate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So give me 1 second to make that happen. All right, hopefully you can see my screen now. And Jace, can you confirm that you can see Pitch Like a Pro on the screen from your side?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes what you're sharing is not always your friend, and technology is not always your friend. So again, my name is Melissa Sassy, and I am IBMZ's Chief Penguin. Since I wrote my bio, I have expanded my area of responsibility, where previously when I came into IBM, my responsibilities included being the global head of a startup program called IBM HyperProtect Accelerator, where I work with 45 startups that is expanding to 100 by the end of this year. We provide business mentorship, technical mentorship, opportunities when it comes to go-to-market, leveraging IBM's network to help startups build and scale. I focus on early stage entrepreneurs, so less than $1 million in revenue, less than 5 years old, and companies that are in the health tech, insurtech, and fintech verticals. I also am responsible for student experience. And what that means is I work with students all over the world. So I'm the global head of that program as well. All of our students to help empower them with technical skills, entrepreneurial thinking, and professional development skills that help them to, again, not be consumers of technology, but move into tech jobs, specifically taking on jobs within the IBM Z world. So that's the brand, or that's the team that I support at IBM. As mentioned, I'm also the CEO and founder of a youth-led nonprofit. We have a co-working space, a robotics lab, and an IoT lab in Tunis, Tunisia, so sandwiched in between Algeria and Libya. I started this endeavor really as a means of looking at what could I do? What could I personally do to look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals and find a way of solving some of those things in my own capacity? And I realized that half of the world was not connected or is not connected to the internet. And significant populations of people all over the world lack even the basic digital skills to make meaningful use of the internet. So what I did is I initially identified a problem, I identified a solution, I did some tests, I crafted my audience, I crafted my team, I figured out my roadmap, I gained access to funding, and I scaled it to 12 countries, impacting tens of thousands of young people. I'm also the CEO and founder of XTP Hustle, which you're not going to find anything about it because I'm building it and I'm not ready to show it to anyone just yet. It's an edtech platform that empowers youth in a gamified fashion with tokens and opportunities to share and collaborate across three areas: entrepreneurial thinking, digital skill building, and what I call habitudes, habits and attitudes, meaning a fancy way of saying professional development. And I believe those three things are the secret sauce to being prepared for the future of work. Whether you're an entrepreneur, meaning you've got your own company, or you're an intrapreneur, meaning you're innovating inside of someone else's company. Everything is global, and all of us need to think globally, especially during these COVID-19 times where we're all at home, or we're all working from home, or studying from home, learning from home, interacting with our friends from home, and all of the things that have changed our lives significantly. For me, COVID-19 has been both a blessing and a curse. And what I mean by that is it's shown the importance of digital skill building, of online education, and also having your side hustle. So let's jump in. All right, again, you can find me at Mentor Africa with a K on Twitter. And you've got my fun little penguin title, which many of you are probably thinking, wait a second, where did this penguin title come from? I looked at my job title and it was very boring. And I decided that I didn't want to have a boring job title. If you think about my role at Microsoft before I joined IBM, I was an impact investor. I focused on building internet and energy access solutions around the world. In rural communities, we started out in sub-Saharan Africa, and then we moved, even building internet connectivity solutions on Native American lands across the United States, which, by the way, I don't know if you are familiar with this, but did you know that 24 million people in the United States lack access to the internet? And of that 24 million, 19.4 are in rural communities. And did you also know that 34% of Native American tribes, so the Native people of the United States, lack access to the internet? It's a big, wicked problem everywhere. And that's where my research comes from for my PhD. At any rate, that's what I was working on at Microsoft. I had a friend of mine. She's an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur, Donna Zucker. And she had this job title called the Chief Ninja Cat. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I want to be a Chief Ninja Cat. That was her job title that she came up with. And then I met this guy. We haven't actually met in real life, but we met online. And he has this Twitter handle called Thready the T-Rex. And it created this movement at Microsoft around these dinosaurs and these ceramic dinosaurs that people would bring around to different events. He was a fun entrepreneur. He still is. And I thought, wow, we have Thready the T-Rex and we have Ninja Cat. And I'm nothing. My job title was program manager, so boring, right? And then after I left and I came to IBM, I was in Pakistan. I was in Karachi, Pakistan. And I was at the startup incubator called the Nest.io. And I met this woman, and her name is Jihan Atta, and her job title was the big bird of the nest, funded by Google. And I thought, wow, we've got a Ninja Cat, we've got a T-Rex, and we have a bird, a big bird. And I'm still a program manager, global head of a startup program, still boring. It sounds cool and sexy to be the global head, but I thought I still want an animal title. And I thought, I work in tech. The penguin is a symbol of open source technology. IBM is, incredibly passionate about open source technology, knowing that we own a company called Red Hat. And I thought, ooh, I could be a penguin. Because the penguin, I think, has many special attributes. It's got these kind of small arms, if you will. You put that penguin in the desert, and that penguin's not going to thrive. You put that penguin in the right circumstances, and that penguin's going to thrive. I'm like that penguin, where you put me in the right place, I'm going to thrive. You put me in the wrong place, I'm not going to thrive. It's about knowing your superpowers. It's about knowing what you're good at and taking your superpowers and incorporating them into anything and everything that you do, yet being aware and comfortable with your vulnerabilities and shouting loud and proud about what those vulnerabilities might be. These are other traits of an entrepreneur. All right, we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about what to put in your pitch deck. Because again, one of the things I mentioned is that in order to truly build and scale, you need to know your product, your solution backwards and forwards, so that as you're approaching other entrepreneurs, angel investors, venture capitalists, corporate accelerators, like the one that I run, one of the necessary building blocks is to really understand and know, what do you have? What is your secret sauce? And where are you going? So a pitch deck is really an opportunity to share the ingredients to your secret sauce. You use it as a means of giving your audience insight into your business. You're using it with anyone and everyone. And that's online, face-to-face, with investors, customers, co-founders. Yes, you should have a co-founder. It broadens your ability to think big, think differently. And we'll talk more about building diverse and inclusive teams in a second. You make it engaging, using visual prompts to pitch your business. This is more of a longer form version, but you should be prepared to have this down, the necessary kind of, let's call it the high level facts, your high level pitch. You should be able to do it in 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, 20 minutes. All right, so you start out with a problem statement. What is that big, wicked problem you're trying to solve? It's not about going out and selling your product. It's not about the solution. It's what is that problem that you're solving? What pain points are you alleviating? How are you bringing joy, alleviating frustrations, maybe even making the world a better place? Which, by the way, you do not need to trade profits for making the world a better place. You can do both of those things at the same time. Companies are doing it more and more every single day. And many venture capitalists are looking at investments, or many asset managers are looking at investments and only making investments if there is a number of different things that are included. And that's solving a big, wicked challenge, but also having the right business model. So you're doing well while doing good, meaning you're making money, but you're also making the world a better place for those after you, for your children and their children. You want your problem statement to be concise. You want to demonstrate one problem. You want people to understand it easily. For example, the world lacks digital skills. It's true, they do. And maybe include some data points. According to the United Nations, blah, 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 blah. Okay? You remember before where I talked about internet access and I talked about 50% of the world lacking access to the internet? That came from the UN. It's actually 48%. It's a reputable number. It demonstrates the size. I talked about a percentage. And imagine the impact that that has on the ability to go to school, have a job, increase your healthcare outcomes, increase your agricultural outcomes. Lots of impacts across the board in all facets of society, right? You want to persuade and influence your audience, maybe even tie it to a real person or a scenario. So in that particular example, I may say, as part of my research, I interviewed 14 tribe members from Laguna Pueblo, from Navajo Nation, and Zia Pueblo. Those are all Native American tribes in the US. I interviewed 14 people living on those Native American reservations or pueblos who lacked access to the internet. How has it impacted their lives? Well, one individual got admitted into Harvard, and he went to Harvard and he worked part-time as a tutor. During COVID, he had to go back home. He doesn't have access to the internet at home. How is he going to learn and keep up with his studies. As his tutoring moved online, how is he going to gain an income for his family? Well, plain and simply, he's not, unless he's going to spend time in a parking lot outside of a library. You may feel this yourself, this challenge. This is one area where I've seen the challenge. I'll give you another one. My daughter, my children live in Tunis, Tunisia. And 5 years ago, my daughter said to me, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft. That's her accent. So what do you mean? And I realized she was learning Microsoft Word and that she didn't have access to her own computer in the classroom, and neither did the other children. So there's one computer shared amongst 30 to 40 children in that classroom. And I thought, wow, how can young people be prepared for the future of work if they don't have access to the fundamental, thing, a device that helps them to learn digital skills? It's impossible. How can they be creators and makers and doers empowered by technology if they can't even be consumers? Now, my kids have access to devices at home, but many of these children do not. So I thought, wow, that's a problem. What can I do about that problem? That's what led me to create my own nonprofit. I did a test. I ended up getting 400 laptops from HP and Microsoft and sent them to 20 schools across the country. I took 3 weeks off from work to travel around the country. I went to 26 governments. I was in the Sahara. I was on the Libyan border. I was on the Algerian border. And I went around with a car full of engineers and a trunk full of laptops, teaching kids to code. And as we traveled around, the kids had never been exposed to computer science before. Many of them had never really worked on a computer before. And what they got out of that was a passion for what the world could be for them if they had access and skills. Many of them went on to study more, study independently, spend time in the library, and search out for programs that would help them to gain access to digital skills. I realized that there weren't a lot of programs that enabled young people to learn for free. So I created my own nonprofit. I selected a CEO. I selected a CTO. I selected a diverse and inclusive team to empower these young people to be deterred from violent extremism while learning what it means to code, to create mobile applications, e-commerce solutions, so that they could so that they could be the leaders of tomorrow and create their own jobs. I talked about it a lot and used my personal brand to write, to speak, to share, to contribute research papers. It's now funded by the US Department of State in their Big Grants program. We've gotten funding from Google, from SAP, from HP, and been nominated for UN awards. And you know what it took? Remember when I was going through my notebook and I shared a lot of that stuff with you about, wow, where did that stuff go? Oh, here is my notebook again. I'm going to pull that back out. I didn't know what was it was an unknown future. The future was uncertain. I had to reimagine the future. I couldn't predict it. I had to focus on the things that I could control, and I had to take action to make progress. I corrected when things went wrong, when we had a falling out with a team member. But you can feel this problem, right? And you can see some of the things and the feelings that I had. So in your problem statement, you're going to think about who has the problem, what's the problem, where's the problem, when does it come to life, and how does this impact others? You heard me talk about my problem that I'm solving, and that's access to digital skills. So who's it impacting? Wow, it's impacting the world. But where did I focus? I initially focused on Tunisia, and then I scaled it from there. So what's that problem exactly? All right, we talked about that. We talked about that too. When does it come to life? Wow, when you want to see a doctor, you want to know about healthcare information, when you want to go to school, when you want to work from home, when you want to check on your yields or pricing as a farmer. How does this impact others? Wow, a lot of areas. We talked about that. You want to be data-driven. Everything should be based on solid evidence. Remember the source of your data. It should be reputable, credible, reliable, and you shouldn't get caught up in fake news. Don't get caught up in media misinformation and disinformation. Nothing can make your audience turn off from what you're talking about more than including an inaccurate stat or something that is just not reputable and scholarly. You want to think about your motivation. What's your personal story? How are you going to emotionally connect with your audience, showcasing that you, as the entrepreneur, your team, is the only one to go out and solve this big, wicked challenge that's going to not only make money, but also make the world a better place. You heard mine. You want to build a team with different backgrounds, experience levels, genders, and abilities. You want to be inclusive. Your team should be reflective of your customer. You want to think about your structure, who's doing what. You want to know their background. And you want to think about who your advisors are. I'm a big fan of surrounding myself around the people who I look up to. So I talked to you about Donna Sakar. I look up to her. She's also a friend. I look at the things that I like about her, and I translate those into my own world, into my own activities. Yeah. It's thinking about what is your solution. Again, introducing your solution and your company, making your audience feel that you're the only one to solve that problem, or you're the only team to solve that problem. Now, initially, you're focusing on the first 6 to 12 months when you're launching your program, launching your startup. But ultimately, you're thinking about version 2, version 3, but focus on it version by version. If you get too far out there, you're going to end up being everywhere and nowhere. You want to showcase your tech chops, and that's really understanding, even if you're non-technical, what is your architectural diagram? What is your tech roadmap? And really being security first. If you're collecting personally identifiable information from your customer, it's not just doing what regulations tell you to do, but going above and beyond and showcasing that you believe that data protection, privacy, and security are human rights. You're thinking about your future roadmap. Again, think 6 to 12 months out. And you're prioritizing. You're not going to solve everything. You're not doing everything at once because you're going to spin and never create anything. I have a lot of startups I work with that run after the next shiny thing. They have a conversation and then they pivot. They have a conversation and they pivot. This is where you need to focus, know that things are uncertain, adjust as appropriate, but recognize that you can't be everywhere and nowhere. You want to have people feel your product, and that's giving people an opportunity to see it. And maybe that's pictures, a demo, maybe it's a video, whatever you have time to do. Have them feel it hands-on. It's making sure that you have product market fit. So your solution is tied to the problem statement, and your solution actually solves the problem. And people are ready for that solution. Sometimes people are not ready for the solution that you're proposing. Think about how many entrepreneurial endeavors fail. 80 to 90% of startups fail. Why do they fail? They might fail because of lack of product market fit, lack of a value proposition. Again, customers may not be ready, lack of access to funding. You might not have the right team that you've built. There might be a falling out of the team. Those are some of the reasons startups fail. And did you know that in the US, only 3% of female founders gain access to venture capital? last year. Still, I think the number's even lower when you look at COVID times. It's terrible. We all have a lot of room to grow when it comes to how do we build, how do we scale, how do we gain access to capital. It's your competition, thinking about what other solutions exist and recognizing why is your product, service, or solution worth more, and why would someone want to pay more, or why would they want to utilize your app instead of someone else's app? What makes you different and special? Keeping in mind that you're going to have direct competitors and indirect competitors. And you want to think about your competitive insights. So how are you going to approach each of those competitors? Is that approach going to vary depending upon your competitor? But also remembering that sometimes your competitors can be your partners. So for example, IBM competes with AWS, Amazon Web Services, in our cloud business. But we also sell AWS software. Interesting, right? Very, very interesting that you can compete with a company. You can also partner with a company. You want to think about, how is your competitor failing? What are they missing? Where are they succeeding? And again, having that competitive advantage to showcase why your solution, or how your solution, is a better product market fit for your audience. It's creating buyer personas for each of your target markets, continuing to evolve those over time. And that means incorporating design thinking. You're thinking about how your solution addresses their wants, needs, aspirations, and frustrations. And you're thinking about how you can become a design thinking practitioner. Become one. I'm going to give you a link on where you can become a design thinking practitioner, because you're going to be audience centered in everything that you do. You're understanding them, you're talking to them, you're talking with them, you're knowing them. Most importantly, you're empathizing with them. You're showcasing the market size and you're bringing your customer to life. So that's, what's your total available market? What's your serviceable market? What is obtainable? Who's your customer exactly? What are their demographics? What geography or geographies are you focused on? Sometimes people say, okay, I'm just going to launch it. Well, you got to kind of test and learn, and you got to be somewhere or you end up nowhere. You may not have customers in place, but if you do, what are those deals? Or if you don't, what are those testimonials? Hey, you know what? If you build this, I will come. And that means getting some quotes, a picture, a video. If you already have paying customers, it's enabling your customers to tell the story on your behalf instead of you telling it. So for example, my startup, my nonprofit, my volunteers and my participants are the ones who talk about the impact that the program has. It's not necessarily me. It's not necessarily my team. It comes off as more credible, authentic, and transparent if your customer is telling a story about why they used your product, how it solved a challenge that they had, how it created joy, how it alleviated frustration, and why you're special. It's just kind of like if I said to you, oh, IBM is awesome. Well, I work at IBM. Okay, yeah. But let's say someone who doesn't work at IBM that used an IBM product says, oh, wow, that IBM cloud, it's the most secure on the planet. When they use IBM Cloud HyperProtect services. All right, that's a bit more compelling, right? So you want to think about your marketing tactics. Not everything's going to be relevant. You want to be specific. You want to include your approach and your strategy for each tactic. But essentially, how are you reaching your customers? Lots of examples. We heard about branding and how important branding is. To build and scale, you've got to get the word out. Maybe tapping into influencers, affiliates, or partners, if you will. Maybe word of mouth, social. Maybe you've got some social advertising happening. Maybe you're running events like this one today. You want to think about your business model. So how are you pricing it? What's recurring? What's one time? What are your primary and secondary revenue streams? What are your ongoing costs? How are you going to make money? But again, there's no trade-off between making money and making the world a better place. You can do both at the same time. It's thinking about investment. What do you need to get started? What do you need to move to the next level? Are you ready if somebody writes you a check right now? Where do you think like you can get money? Is it from angels? Is it from family and friends? You bootstrapping things? Is it, wow, I'm going to go and apply for, this, that, or the other? Are you going after your Series A, your Series B, your Series C? Don't be afraid to go big, but be realistic. You want to captivate your audience with your close because, well, people remember how you start and how you end. You want to emphasize your key points, summarize your pitch concisely and in 1 minute. And then you want to open the floor for questions. So, where can you learn more? Where can you engage with me and my team? I've got 2 places for you. One is the Student Hub. You can find it here. And I believe that we're all lifelong learners. So if you're not a student, don't worry, there's stuff here for you as well, because we all are learners. We spend our lives learning, whether that's formally or informally. As I mentioned, I run a startup accelerator. You can learn more here. Both of these have discussion boards. You want to learn more? You want to collaborate with my team? You want to find out where you can get more information? Use that discussion board. So sign up for all of these, both of these, and interact with our team today. You can also find me at on Twitter at Mentor Africa with a K, as I mentioned. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and we'll pass it over to Jace and team to see what we're going to do next. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Melissa. That was incredibly helpful, especially having someone who has experience working as a capital provider and with capital providers. Just kind of thinking, how do I coherently tell my story as an entrepreneur, and so forth. I think both of these talks could really be consolidated into this one lesson of, learning as an insatiably curious individual, building as an entrepreneur, and then sharing that whole journey with your community, with your network, and so forth. So yeah, that was incredibly helpful. Thank you so much for that. And so now we're going to transition into the Q&A live session, where we're going to be taking in all of your questions and we'll ask them to the speakers. One thing I also want you to keep in mind is that the attendance form should now be live in the YouTube video description, and it should also be put in the chat as well if you need it there. So please take the time to fill that out. It's just a quick thing right quick. And then after that, let's see, that's all we have for the moment. So we're going to move into Q&A, and Mr. Ngugi is going to be moderating that for this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and transition into that.
Hey, Jace, I'm not sure whether Mr. Ngugi can hear us, but if not, why don't we shift and ask Professor Wanjao the first question. I believe I do have one here. Professor Wanjao, on branding, we have a question on, does changing your brand regularly affect the customer trust and relation in the business? What advice would you give someone who seems to be constantly changing their brand?
Changing your brand is dangerous for your business. It might actually means that you're not confident about the existing brand, and you can only build on what is in the market. And we've said that branding involves value addition. And if you keep on changing the brand, then the customer will ask himself or herself, what value addition is there? Yeah. Does it mean that it's not a premium brand, that's why you keep on shifting? And having an entrepreneurial market, um, being a player in the entrepreneurial in an entrepreneurial market, this might lock you out in that very exciting market, and that's because it means you won't have a brand loyalty. Yeah, so it's a dangerous thing. It's better you stick on what you have and continuously or innovatively, incremental innovation, engage in incremental innovation to ensure that that particular brand um, evolves and has brand loyalty, because you want to have a premium, something that people can actually um, associate with it. Yeah. So brand building doesn't mean brand changing. It disconnects you from the consumers. Thank you.
Got you, got you. Thank you so much for that. I do have a question for Melissa, and it is, what advice would you give to someone who's drafting their pitch deck, including where to go for input and editing?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat window in our chat window, and then hopefully our colleagues who are behind the scenes can add this to the YouTube link. I'll give you a copy of my presentation. Let me just type it in real quick. You can also find a lot of other presentations in there around preparing for the future of work. So feel free to look through all of the presentations that I have. It's on SlideShare. So feel free to use that. That is kind of one example that you can use to, start out and create it. But I think that where do you go for input? I would say that think about, startup accelerators, think about incubators, think about entrepreneurs who have gained access to capital. Those are great places to go. Think about, your professor of entrepreneurship, at this university, for example. What professors are, doing interesting things when it comes to the startup ecosystem? Who are people you look up to?
Okay. Oh, that's very good. That's very good. Okay, so thank you for that. Actually, that's quite useful, and we will definitely share that on the platform for people. I do have one question for Professor Wenjao, back on branding, particularly on multi-product branding. One of our YouTube listeners asked, multi-product branding seems good in terms of sales returns, but how best do I enhance my customers' loyalty for multi-product branding? And the example they give is, consider Pwani Oil. They advertise both Mpishi Poa and Fry Made Fresh Fry. And some customers develop a preference for one or the other. So how do you do multi-product branding? That's for you, Professor Anjao.
Yeah. The multi-product branding is something that has been pursued by what again I'll call entrepreneurial firms, because they are ready to take the risks. They are also demonstrating that they know that this one particular brand would not actually increase their market share. So they have really invested through market research, getting to know the levels of individuals who exist in a particular market. So you'll find that the example is used of Pwani Oil, Pishipoa, Fry Made, Fresh Fry. It actually takes care of a certain category of the market. Yeah. And if it flops, then it means that there was a gap during the market research process. Yeah, maybe in the aspect of the testing, the pilot test, maybe they didn't get it right during the pilot test, or even there was a weak interpretation about the pilot test. yeah, and they moved on. So it's something that I've encouraged uh, SMEs that, of course, want to graduate and one day become large, that you develop um, multi-product branding, as long as you know who you are targeting in the market. Yeah, and that will create the customer loyalty that you've been seeking. For example, where I sit in the board, Sheth has around uh, almost 10 uh, products that are doing well, and each one of them has a certain target market. Yeah, and they have worked towards ensuring they have customer loyalty because they engage the market players on a regular basis, the consumers on a regular basis, and they keep on improving on that particular brand based on the views that they have received. So that's what I can say about it.
Thank you, thank you so much for that. I do have a question for Melissa. Targeting this issue of branding is actually an interesting question, and it's talking about you know. You mentioned that you work with startups. Do you think startups should spend a good bit of time branding? Is that something that you consider on when you're taking a look at them in the accelerated program? How well branded are they? How is their product being engaged with the customer?
Yeah, but I think it's not just about how is the company branding itself, but how are you as a founder branding yourself? How are you crafting your own personal brand to showcase that you are the one? Because a lot of VCs, a lot of venture capitalists, they're not necessarily looking at the company. Sometimes they're looking at you, and there is significant bias. One of the things I mentioned in my presentation was 2%, 3% of venture capital funds last year in the US went to female founders. We all know that there, 3% of founders, that we know that there are more than 3% of founders who are women.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Black community, same challenge. You see this when it comes to, I think might be a lead into the next question, but around expat bias.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad
I beat you to the punch, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna wait for the question.
Actually, that's a good one. Let me get to that question. So in Kenya, there has been a pattern where expat founders,
not just in Kenya, other parts of the continent as well.
Okay, well, so where expat founders raise more money than local founders, and considering that IBM runs an accelerator hub, how does it work towards minimizing expat bias?
I think it's an issue. It's an important issue because I think, and it goes back to that kind of concept around, where is venture capital coming from? Is it coming from Silicon Valley, for example? And we know that, in the tech industry, there's bias. We have less representation of women. We have less representation of the Black community. And I think that filters through into making investment decisions. And that's why I think it's very, very important to focus on your personal brand. How do you demonstrate that you are the founder to solve this challenge? I actually am glad you brought this up because I had this conversation yesterday. Funny enough, I had one of my startups from Nigeria reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like some support with, getting the word out about our startup. We're getting ready to do our raise." And I could tell that the guy on the phone, had a very American accent, but I knew his name was not Nigerian. But we weren't on video, and I didn't know his face, so I didn't want to make any faulty decisions. And I asked him, I said, remind me, because I didn't have their pitch deck in front of me and I couldn't remember, who was the founder and who was the CTO. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, for this particular startup, remind me, do you have a Nigerian national as your CEO or CTO? Because we just onboarded a lot of startups. So I couldn't remember, what the backgrounds were. He said, yeah, both the CEO and the CTO are based out of Lagos. I said, okay, good. Because right now there are a lot of conversations around, expat bias. I would say that it's a real issue that needs to be addressed. And it is something that I focus on, not just in, when it comes to the startup program, but other aspects of things. Because if you look at just, I talked about digital skills and internet access, filters through into there as well when we talk about locally generated content, local insight, and really understanding the problem statement. And is an expat able to truly understand that problem statement as much as someone who's local, who's lived and breathed it? I wish I had the secret bullet to tell you, how to solve expat bias or how to increase venture capital funding going toward, women or the Black community or the Latinx community. I've written some white papers and provided some materials to our startup accelerator, Village Capital, who's doing some very interesting things when it comes to racial equity. And I think part of that is having a focus that, hey, I'm going to look at local solutions. And for me, being in a startup accelerator, I look at who are those founders. What experience do they actually have feeling and living and breathing that problem? Or have they just flown in with their solution? You'll notice in my nonprofit, my CEO, he's Tunisian. My CTO is Tunisian. My whole entire team is Tunisian in Tunisia. I don't tell them what to do. They decide, even if I'm the founder. So I think it's about how do you take, your own stance and bringing that, for me, into a big tech company. How do I solve that? I wish I knew the answer. Let's figure that out because I don't have the silver bullet yet.
Thank you so much for that, Melissa. Actually, that's quite not only thought-provoking but insightful in terms of how we can overcome this bias in the community, and which actually leads on to my next question for Professor Wanjao. Speaking of biases, when it comes to branding, we have a question here in terms of how do you overcome community misconceptions when branding? I mean, how can one, when they are coming up with their brands, kind of overcome these challenges and solve them when they are faced with community misconceptions?
Thank you. I think one of the challenges we talked about was the misconception about colors and the culture. And what I basically said is you have to look at the community that you're targeting. Again, go back to digging out about them and finding out what actually excites them and what actually disconnects them, and build up your product about around what actually excites them. And that's why I gave an example of the Maasai and the Kalenjin and the Kamba and the and the Kikuyu community, understanding which color generates a lot of emotional attachment will help you in packaging that particular product. It's just like, again, you go back to the aspect of religion. You'll get to understand the religion of that particular community and get to know which products will actually do well in that particular community and which will be a turnoff. So package it according to the beliefs, yeah, and emotional attachment of that of the colors that actually excite that particular community, yeah, because there are different interpretations, and someone will tell you that we don't like white here because white reminds us of something that this community is not actually excited about. So that means you have to move away from any branding color that involves white. So that's what I can say.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. As we bring this to a close, I do have two questions. One last question for both Wanjao and Melissa. And essentially, it's this, and we'll start with you, Professor Wanjao, and then go off to Melissa. Can you, the audience is asking, do you have any short courses, especially online, that you can recommend, or any continuing educational resources that people can tap into on the topics that you have mentioned? Of course, this forum is a good example of something that we will continually offer in the future. But do you have any desk courses or links or places where people can go and learn more about branding or anything else related to entrepreneurship?
I think for the links there, you are well positioned to help me, because I know each institute has developed a short course in areas that they feel that they are strong at. For example, Karatina University, we have short courses on marketing, yeah, and they are actually customized according to the kind of consumer that we are actually targeting. If, for example, we have a youth group that has approached us that they are struggling about branding, we will not actually tell them that we don't have that capacity. We will actually engage them, yeah, and be able to deliver on what they're actually seeking for. So I would say that it's tailor-made, yeah, based on the needs of the consumer. About platforms, I think the Chartered Institute Marketing is a good institute. If you look at their website, they have quite a number of short courses on various aspects of marketing, branding, tactics of selling, and all that. Uh, then Dr. Washira, you can chip on that.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I will pass this on to Melissa. I know, Melissa, we have shared some of the links, two of the links that you have given us to share with our audience. And maybe you can speak on those or any other added resources you feel might be useful for people who are considering entrepreneurship or scaling, or anything that you can think of as your final word.
I would recommend joining our Accelerator Hub. I also gave you one for the Student Hub, which I see, we're all learners, I think student is kind of a misnomer. So for startups, I'd recommend joining the Accelerator Hub. I would also recommend that you take part in our bi-weekly live stream. I have shared, at least in this chat window here, which will hopefully be shared with you shortly, two other links. One is Startups with Sassy and Rawls. It's me and my CTO, and we interview CEOs and CTOs every other week. And we talk about, their problem statement, their vision, their mission, their value proposition. It's focused on fintech, health tech, and insurtech. We talk about building and scaling and product market fit, investment readiness, all kinds of stuff. And you can hear straight from startups. So it's not just me talking about, oh, my program's awesome and here's what we do. It's bringing in our startups. The next one, I think, is Lafia, which is based out of Nigeria, and they're doing some cool things in the health tech space. Again, our startup program is very diverse and inclusive. We have 53% of our startups have at least one female founder. 34% of our startups have at least one Black founder. So we're very focused on not just having a global program, but kind of trying to diminish some of that expat bias, if you will. Don't get me wrong, I do invest in expats as well, but I try to balance that with making sure that we've got a team of that the startup has a team of people who are equipped to solve these big wicked challenges. But again, check those things out. Two things I'd highlight would be, if you want to come and be a guest blogger, I open that up to you. And I know there's a lot of people out here that are maybe interested in sharing, more about your startup. If you want to share your startup idea with me, sign up for that platform. Again, it's ibm.biz/accelerator-hub. And in there, you can sign up and you can actually contribute content. It'll come straight to me. You want to get your startup on my roadmap? Check that out. I'm also going to share a link to my program. So I've done it in our chat window, so I've got another link to share. This is to learn more about the program. How can you gain access to $120,000 in cloud credits? How can you gain access to mentorship? I'm recruiting 55 startups this year. And I don't know if you can see my bracelet now, but for those of you in Kenya, I'm a big fan of Kenya. I've spent time in Kenya, and I look forward not only to come back to Kenya, but other countries on the continent, so I can learn about local generated content, local generated ideas, and help to empower you to build and scale.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and I can definitely speak to that from being.
Yeah, my secret sauce, huh? We've worked together.
Program. Yeah. So for those who don't know, I'm a co-founder for a fintech called WirePay, and WirePay did go through the IBM Accelerator program, and that is actually how I got to know Melissa, not only as a mentor but also as a friend. So thank you for that.
And Dr. Wachira is, Kenyan native, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So, talk about empowering, Kenyans in Kenya. Dr. Wachira is a perfect example.
Well, thank you. You're far too kind, far too kind. So on that, I will pass it over to Jace. Jace, I believe you also had some links for continuing resources. I know you have done a lot of time yourself on a lot of continuing education. So maybe you can speak on that as you wrap up the session and as we approach our close. Over to you, Jace.
Yes. So yes, I shared a link in there as well that I frequently use as a current entrepreneur and current university student. So it's called Join Colossus. It's a really good business learning platform. I highly recommend it for everybody because it's free, easily accessible, and so forth. I want to say thank you again to our speakers. This is truly a valuable conversation to be sitting in on, and knowledge to pick off from you guys. It's incredibly helpful for me. I'm sure it is for the rest of the attendees as well. So we really appreciate your time on that. Also, I want to give you guys a quick reminder that the attendance form is still up in the YouTube video description and in the chat as well, I believe. That will be live until shortly after the session. So if you can, just take a few seconds to fill that out so that we can get an idea of who was here for those certificates at the end of the session. So with that said, again, thank you guys very much for speaking here. Asante sana for everybody who attended. And I'm going to pass it on now to Dr. Kagema to finish this up.
All right, thank you very much, good guys, for all this. I'm personally excited as to how we've undertaken today's session. And although my sincere apologies, I had some network problems at the beginning, but I came through and followed virtually everything. Just to thank these commendable presenters for today, Professor Kenneth and Marisa. We felt inspired, and I believe going by the kind of comments we were getting from our participants, it seems today's session has taken us through a particular milestone that is quite colossal. I appreciate you, Professor, for taking us through that level of entrepreneurship, blending. And I even wanted to ask myself, can an individual be a blend? Can you be a blend? Well, that's for me and you. We'll discuss that later. Thanks so much for that presentation. Thanks for Marisa there. I've admired your bracelet. I think
I need more. I need to come and replace it. And I think my earrings as well, maybe.
Yeah, we'll take you to one of these curios in Karatina, and we'll get you a good bracelet.
Good.
And
I may not
Professor,
ever come back. I adore being in Kenya, so I look forward to that once we can all travel again and we're back to normal life.
You are most welcome. We can even send it via DHL. Professor, will give Marisa a Kenyan name, possibly from one of the Kenyan communities.
Yeah.
I'll ask Elizabeth there to think of that name, so that now we Kenyanize you.
Good. I accept. And don't worry, I'm not going to come out and take all of the capital. That is to stay in Kenya for the Kenyan people. So yes.
Yeah, at least we have to Kenyanize you with a good name. I know Elizabeth or even Dorcas there will get
I love
a good
it.
name. That's their task for today.
I propose Waithera.
Yes, thank you so much.
I've already proposed
Waithera.
Waithera.
Does it have some symbolism? We have to get something symbolic.
Yes, we will discuss that. As you have asked about the name has a brand. It's a brand name.
All right, good. That's talk about personal brand. I don't know what more could be a better personal brand than leaving a talk with a Kenyan name. So thank you for allowing me to be part of your community, and thank you for just having me as part of your circle.
Yeah, we have to entrench you into our circle of Kenyanese. And
Good.
even Jez himself, we learned that he was in Kibera some time back, but he didn't come over to the sides of the mountain. We'll also get a good name for him. And Dr. Wachila, you bear witness to that. All right, so it's been quite been a great day today, and I do know that we are getting newer and newer participants. As of today, we had over 630 participants registered, and most of them have even gone back to what was covered in day 1 and day 2. So we are getting quite some overwhelming response. That's quite incredible. And we can't forget to thank the two institutions, Youth Engagement Society and Karatina University, the management of the two institutions, for providing this great forum that it's actually impacting on real lives out there. So just to remind people that tomorrow we even have quite some magnificent talks by Eugene Awori, and even yours truly here, Dr. David. Dr. David will be talking on patenting. Now the ideas we've discussed, how do we put them into legal perspective so that they are not grabbed? We use that word possibly in a not so good way here. So that will be discussed tomorrow, and also about getting the capital. We have so many VCs, venture capitalists out there, looking for those ideas that you have. I've seen that people are saying they have some ideas, they have some startups, they don't have the capital. Tomorrow we'll have a presenter to dissect on that. Please, dear participants, get on board tomorrow so that we get working. And I also wish to thank my colleague Kellen and others. Mr. Ngugi there was here. I don't know if he has left. He's still here. He's the Dean of Students of Karatina University. He has done some good work mobilizing the student community to come and participate. So from myself and from the great team is to wish each one of us a great evening and a great day to those of you in the diaspora. Any last words, Dr. Wachila?
Mine is to thank everyone for being on board. Many thanks to Melissa and Professor Wanjao and Jace for agreeing to take time out of their schedule to speak to the youth. We have seen a great outpouring. We will share the statistics with you after, but we're doing quite well. As Dr. Kagemba mentioned, we had about 630 registries for this session. And of course, because it's being broadcasted on YouTube, the views increase after the session for those who could not watch it live. So there's a lot of feedback that we're getting that's positive, and this was needed, and people are actually learning a lot. And we can't thank you enough for taking the time to help. And hopefully in the not so distant future, we will plan a part 2 of this forum and continue this access. I know Melissa has a lot of programs and that free for universities and for students, even deeper when it comes to tech. So if there's want to do one on coding, or you want to do one
yes,
on
let us know.
We'll be
let us know.
Yeah. So yeah, so mine is just thanks. And I think Carol was going to give the final closing prayer, and then I think we can dismiss.
Okay, pardon guys, before Carlo lead us into the closing prayer, I've just realized that we have a lot of digital deficiency, especially among the youths of this country and even globally. So Melissa, you have a big task, because like you mentioned of digital deficiency in US, in Kenya it is even worse. All these startups do not really have that penetration. So possibly in our quarterly trainings, I believe we'll be having them. That's a big topic that will give a wide berth so that we can
Melissa, I believe you're saying
I have a whole curriculum around digital skill building for young people around safety, security, emotional intelligence, media literacy, introduction to coding, introduction to AI. I would be honored to accept you volunteering me that we are doing a digital skill building program together for youth in Kenya. You have IBM's support, and we have the training material available. I think if you can bring the students, if you can bring the youth, we can bring the speakers, we can bring the content, the curriculum, and even activity kits.
We'll exactly do that, so that will be our now next take-home message for the near future.
All right, David, we have work to do.